Welcome to Echoes of Faith, where stories of hope, resilience, and grace inspire us to find the light in every challenge.
In the unseen battle, Clara Thompson, a devoted prayer warrior, quietly intercedes for strangers in need, never expecting recognition or thanks. Over the years, her unseen prayers create ripples of change, touching lives in miraculous ways. As Clara's health begins to fade, she witnesses the profound impact of her prayers on those she's never met. This inspiring short story from the Echoes of Faith series reminds us that even in the quietest acts of faith, God is always at work, and our prayers, no matter how small or unseen, can transform lives and renew hope. Clara Thompson was not a woman of many words. She wasn't one to make speeches or draw attention to herself, but she had something more powerful than words: her prayers. Every morning before the sun rose, Clara would slip into her cozy living room, clutch her well-worn Bible and kneel by the window. From this quiet corner of her home, she lifted people up in prayer, friends, family, and even strangers she'd never met. Clara had a unique calling. For years she prayed for people she passed in grocery stores, those she read about in newspapers, and faces she saw during her daily walks in the neighborhood. These people had no idea Clara was praying for them. But Clara believed in the power of prayer. She believed that God could change lives, even if those people never knew someone was fighting a spiritual battle on their behalf. One crisp fall morning, as the leaves outside gently floated to the ground, Clara sat in her favorite chair, gazing out the window. Her heart was heavy that day, weighed down by the burdens she sensed in the world around her. The young mother she saw at the park yesterday, struggling to comfort her crying baby, came to mind. Clara whispered a prayer for her strength and patience. Then there was the elderly man who walked with a limp, who she passed by often on her walks. His face seemed burdened with pain. She didn't know his name, but she prayed for his healing and for peace in his heart. Her thoughts drifted to the man at the gas station, who always appeared exhausted, as if life had worn him down. Clara had prayed for him too, asking God to lift his spirit and provide rest for his weary soul. Over the years, Clara had seen glimpses of answered prayers, moments where she believed God had intervened. One time, she saw a woman she had been praying for walk into church with a smile after months of a vacant, sorrowful expression. Another time, a family she had been lifting in prayer was reunited after a long period of conflict. These moments were like little affirmations from God, reminding her that her prayers were not in vain. Still, most of the time, Clara never saw the full picture. She simply trusted that God was working behind the scenes. Her role was to intercede, even if she never witnessed the results. Clara's life took on a familiar rhythm. But one afternoon, as she sat on a park bench reading her Bible, something unusual happened. A woman whom she had never met sat down next to her. The woman looked tired, her shoulders slumped, and her eyes weary. Clara felt the familiar nudge in her heart, the gentle prompting she always recognized as God calling her to pray. "Excuse me, ma'am," the woman began, her voice soft but carrying years of pain. "I know this may sound strange, but I feel like I need to talk to someone, and you look kind." Clara smiled warmly and nodded, gesturing for the woman to continue. "My name is Amanda," she said, taking a deep breath. "I'm going through a hard time. My husband and I separated a few months ago, and I'm barely holding it together for my kids. Sometimes I wonder if anyone even sees me." Clara's heart ached for Amanda. Without hesitation, she reached out and placed a comforting hand on the woman's arm. "You are seen," Clara said gently, "and you are loved, more than you know." Tears welled in Amanda's eyes. I've been praying, but I don't know if God hears me anymore." Clara's heart stirred. "He hears you, Amanda. I promise he does." Amanda looked at Clara with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Amanda, would you mind if I prayed for you right now?" Clara asked. The woman nodded, and right there on the park bench, Clara began to pray aloud for Amanda's healing, for her family's restoration, and for peace in her heart. As she spoke, Amanda's tears fell freely, but there was a sense of release in her sobs, as though she had been carrying a burden far too heavy for her for too long. When the prayer ended, Amanda wiped her tears and smiled faintly. "Thank you. I've never had someone pray for me like that before." Clara simply nodded. As Amanda walked away, Clara felt something shift. This was different. She felt as though God had allowed her to see a glimpse of the fruit of her labour, a person she'd been called to pray for who could now walk with a little more hope. Years passed, and Clara continued her quiet ministry of prayer. She prayed for strangers she passed on the street, for those whose stories touched her heart, and for the countless souls God placed in her path. But one day, Clara's own health began to fail. The arthritis in her knees made it difficult to kneel, and her eyesight began to blur. Yet, she prayed. Even in her physical weakness, her spirit remained strong. One Sunday, Clara was sitting in church when the pastor invited people to come forward if they had a testimony to share. Clara, now in her late 70s, listened as several people stood and spoke. Toward the end, a young man stepped forward, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I don't know who this woman is," the man began, looking out at the congregation, "but I've been praying that I could meet her." Clara sat up a little straighter, curiosity piqued. "A few years ago, my life was falling apart," the man continued. "I was addicted, lost, and hopeless. But one day, while I was working at a gas station, I felt this sudden, overwhelming sense of peace. I knew in that moment that someone was praying for me. It was like God was telling me, 'You're not alone.'" Clara's breath caught in her throat. She remembered him, the man at the gas station. "I've turned my life around since then," the man said. "I've come to know God in a way I never thought possible, and I believe it's because someone was interceding for me." Clara felt tears well up in her eyes as she sat there in awe of how God had worked behind the scenes. In the following weeks, Clara would hear more stories, testimonies of people who, unbeknownst to her, had been touched by her prayers over the years. The woman at the park, the elderly man with the limp, and even Amanda, who had come back to church with her husband, all shared how prayer had played a role in their lives. Clara realized that while she had never sought recognition, God had allowed her to see the ripple effects of her faithfulness. She had fought in an unseen battle, praying for those in need, and now she could witness the miraculous results. As Clara sat by her window one evening, the last rays of sunlight casting a golden glow over her Bible, she smiled. She had never needed to be seen, but God had seen her. And through her prayers, countless lives had been changed, proving that even in the quiet, unseen moments, battles are being won. The power of prayer, Clara knew, was not in being noticed, but in trusting that God is always at work, whether we see it or not.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, no matter what fires we face, faith will always carry us through. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to leave a comment. Subscribe for more stories that inspire and uplift. This is Echoes of Faith, where every story brings hope. If today's story moved you, be sure to discover more heartfelt journeys in the Echoes of Faith series and uplift your spirit. Don't miss out on the next chapter. There's always more to uncover.